In November of 1877, the city of Deadwood was not yet 2 years old, having been properly laid out and organized in April of 1876. But the new town had received national attention. Curiosity about Deadwood abounded, and many people had questions. How much gold was there for the taking? How many people were becoming rich? Would the town last or dry up and become abandoned? The first newspaper in Deadwood, the Black Hills Pioneer, began on June 8, 1876, and a constant stream of news about the gold mining camp began to trickle through the states. However, not everyone interested in Deadwood had access to the Black Hills Pioneer, and only certain articles were shared with other newspapers. The people of Yankton were especially eager for news about the Black Hills and Deadwood, and newspaperman Wheeler Samuel Bowen stepped in to bring his opinions and observations. Wheeler Bowen, also called Colonel Bowen, was the co-owner and publisher of the Daily Press and Dakotaian of Yankton, Dakota Territory. He had served in the Civil War as a member of the 12th Wisconsin Battery and had moved to Yankton in 1873. Running a newspaper was in his blood. His father had ran a newspaper in Akron, Ohio, and in Janesville, Wisconsin. In Yankton, Bowen had started the Yankton Black Hiller, and its success allowed him to create the Daily Press and Dakotaian. Bowen decided to travel to the Black Hills and to Deadwood and share his experiences with the readers of his newspaper. He began his journey on October the 20th, and arrived in Deadwood on November the 9th, staying in Welsh's hotel. While in Deadwood, Bowen wrote an article that would be published in his newspaper on November 21st, 1877. Deadwood, its situation, extent, and business. Pearson's early discovery and the subsequent magic development. Population, buildings, institutions, and people. Election topics, and the Keats mine troubles. Editorial correspondence. Deadwood, November 14th, 1877.
To reach Deadwood, one drops from the clouds into a huge crack in the earth. This opening is the gulch which yields the root of all evil in sufficient quantities to render Deadwood one of the busiest spots in the entire mining region of America. It is walled in on the right and on the left by hills which rise hundreds of feet, almost perpendicular, and leave its denizens only a small strip of sky to half break their necks in trying to look at. It is the bed of the Whitewood and the bed of the Deadwood creeks. Small mountain runs they are, and in and over them and along the precipitous faces of the pine-clad hills is the city of Deadwood and its suburbs built. It begins with Elizabethtown on the north, and runs up the gulch a distance of 4 miles at least, taking in its course Deadwood proper, Gayville, and Central City. This is an almost continuous settlement, and consists mainly of business houses. Among them winds the creeks which drains this region, and its waters are thick and red, with the refuse from the stamp mills at Central and Gayville, which are busy night and day, crushing the golden mineral and separating there from the yellow particles which have brought people and prosperity to the wilderness of 2 years ago. The settlement and rapid growth of these mining towns is a result which astonishes even those who have taken up their abode therein. If I remember rightly, it is not more than 2 years since Pearson lifted the first golden speck from the waters of Deadwood Creek, and that was the beginning of its history. It is less than 3 years ago that John Gordon and his squad of adventurers came into Yankton from the wilderness of the Black Hills, and told the story of his gold discovery, and exhibited specimens of what he had taken from the soil of the then almost unknown gold fields of Dakota. It was his success which turned toward the hills the eyes of the world and sent its laden trains and eager thousands across the prairies to this new goal of the fortune hunter. It was Pearson of Yankton, whose lucky find brought the nucleus of the present thriving settlement in the gulches of the Whitewood and Deadwood. That the result could have been attained in so short a time is due alone to the excitement which enthuses a people when the hope of speedy riches is laid before them. The population of the hills is now mainly congregated in this region, for the reason that the rich placer mines of its earliest history, made easy to work by the abundance of water which flows through the gulches, formed an inducement not offered in other known portions of the hills. The placer mines were, however, quickly exhausted, and attention was turned to the quartz deposits which make up the hills on either side of the gulch. Capital and labor, first directed hither by the easy yield of the claims, turned its attention to the development of the quartz. It proved remunerative, and of so great an area that mill after mill has been added, and the gulch above Deadwood is alive with busy stamps, working night and day, reducing the golden ore. The argument of the Deadwoodite is that where the money is, there will the people congregate. Certainly they have gathered here, and their numbers are variously estimated at from 10,000 to 20,000 in the gulches tributary to this city. New mills are constantly coming in, and developments are being rapidly extended in all directions. The mining is all carried on above Deadwood, at Gayville and Central City and Anchor City and Lead City. These separate designations have all come from the names of mining camps which have rapidly grown into cities, which have in turn run together so that it is difficult to tell where one begins and the other leaves off. The people of Deadwood proper are beginning to fear that their town is liable to be thrown into the shade by the rapid growth of others located at the scenes of actual operations. Where the workmen are concentrated and where the gold is being taken out are the more natural business points, and extensive mercantile houses follow rapidly upon the heels of every fresh development. This draws trade away from Deadwood, and Deadwood is not at all easy under future probabilities. Its people have therefore conceived the idea of building a narrow-gauge railroad from the head of the gulch down to their town and transporting the crude ore to within their own doors. With their superior water privileges, they hope to thus induce the removal of the stamp mills to Deadwood, when its waning star will beam brightly again, and Deadwood will once again become the hub of the mining interests of the hills. The population of Deadwood comprises all classes and conditions of men and women. It is a heterogeneous mass of humanity, with a liberal sprinkling of active, energetic businessmen. Everybody's object is to make money, and I am strongly tempted to believe that some of them left the laws of Moses back in the States when they struck out for this region, and obliterated from their minds the teachings of more virtuous days. Yet this is characteristic of all mining communities, and while Deadwood can boast of its full share, I met a few men who would pass muster in the most puritanical shire of ancient America. Some of the most extensive business houses in the West can be found in Deadwood, and all appear to be doing a lively business. The buildings are all of wood, hastily constructed and built each against the other. There is consequently great danger from fire, there being little water in the gulch and no means of handling it. To protect their property from destruction, the backyard of each merchant is occupied by an underground fireproof with an inclined plane running from the back door of the store down towards the bowels of the earth. When an alarm of fire is given, the merchant chucks the goods from his store into the underground apartment, closes the doors, walks out in front of his store, and says, "Now fetch on your conflagration." He is ready at all times, and feels comparatively secure with his protective appliance. I meet many Yankton people in Deadwood. Ben Bear, in company with McInnes, is running a wholesale liquor store. June Dix is representing the hardware interests of Ritchie and Dix. James A. Hand and Colonel John Lawrence are waiting to know whether or not they are to be slaughtered by the people of their chosen land and turned adrift without an office. Fidge Dahl is a clerk in Lawrence's office, and H.C. Ashe makes it a partial rendezvous, though his interests are farther up the gulch. Judge Bennett is busy with hard court work, and General Dawson occupies the clerk's desk at his right. There are very many other Yankton men here whom I do not now recall. One meets them every day upon the streets. Charlie Collins I saw the other day. His residence and newspaper are in Central City, and in addition to the profits of his business he enjoys the profitable salary of $12 per year as postmaster. Of the election here you have probably obtained full accounts from the papers. The ins are all out, and only a small fraction of the outs are in, and they are not in yet, though they say they are going to qualify and take possession in a few days, disregarding the law which specifies that all official terms shall begin on the first day of January. There is a strong disposition on the part of some of the officials to carry this matter into the Supreme Court, and they propose, therefore, to hold to their offices. Others will make no opposition. The great interest of the election centered upon the contest for sheriff. Bullock made a hard fight. It is generally conceded that he has no superior as an officer, but his politics were against him. His successful opponent, Mr. Manning, is the keeper of a gambling and drinking house, is lavish with his money, and is popular with the boys. The Keats mine troubles look to me as nearly settled. The miners are weakening, and the owner of the mine is as stiff in the back as at the opening of the contest. The case is about in this shape. Mr. Whitney, owner of the Keats mine at Central City, made a contract with Mr. Conley to remove ore from the mine. Mr. Conley employed a large number of men, but soon got short of money and failed to pay them. The miners took forcible possession of the mine, stocked it with provisions, fortified its entrance, and then waited on Mr. Whitney and demanded their pay. That gentleman declined to consider anything from them. They were working for Mr. Conley, and Conley had overdrawn his account with Whitney several $1,000s. Conley fraternized with the strikers, claiming that Whitney owed him money, which if paid would be turned over to them. I believe the books of the Keats mine show that nothing is due to Conley. Miners from neighboring camps joined the strikers, and the riot assumed formidable proportions. Incendiary speeches were made by Deadwood men who should have known better. They have been arrested and will be thoroughly prosecuted. Sheriff Bullock organized a posse at the beginning of the outbreak, and though he has insufficient force to put down the mob, he has held it in check by careful management and has prevented bloodshed. It is reported that troops are coming, but it looks now as though they would not be needed. I am told this morning that J.B. Pearson is to be prosecuted for extending aid and comfort to the riotous miners. I leave here tomorrow for Rapid City and Hayward City and expect to consume a week in visiting that country. B.
Here are some notes concerning the contents of the article by Bowen. Pearson. The Pearson referred to was John B. Pearson, who, along with Frank Bryant, Thomas Moore, Richard Lowe, James Pearman, Sam Blodgett, and George Hauser, were the first party of prospectors to explore the Deadwood area in August of 1875. John B. Pearson is one of the people credited as being the first to discover gold in Deadwood Gulch, although there is debate over who made the discovery first. John Gordon. John Gordon was the leader of 28 people who made the first expedition to the Black Hills in search of gold. The party reached the Black Hills in December of 1874 and built a wooden palisade known as the Gordon Stockade. The expedition ended and Gordon traveled to Sioux City in February 1875. Gordon attempted another expedition, but the 2nd Cavalry discovered them and took the party to Fort Laramie. People of Deadwood. Bowen mentioned meeting several people in Deadwood by name. I found an advertisement in December 1877 for the Ben Bayer and McInnes wholesale liquor store. McInnes Bayer & Co., importers and dealers in Kentucky whiskeys, brandies, gins, foreign and domestic, wines and cigars, Main Street, opposite Grand Central Hotel, Deadwood, Dakota. As for Ritchie and Dick's Hardware, I found a hardware bill for them in October 1877. The Colonel John Lawrence, referred to in the article, was the first county treasurer. The county that Deadwood is in, Lawrence County, is actually named after John Lawrence. The James A. Hand mentioned was the Register of Deeds. Judge Bennett refers to Granville Bennett, who served as a judge for the Black Hills Judicial District in 1877. His court was at first held in Pennington County, but he would later move to Deadwood. Charlie Collins was a newspaperman who promoted the settlement of the Black Hills. Collins started the Black Hills Mining and Exploring Association of Sioux City, which financed the Gordon expedition described earlier. In 1877, Collins was living at Central City in the Black Hills, where he published the Central City Champion and Mining Record newspaper. The next year, Collins wrote the first book to be published and printed in the Black Hills, titled Collins's History and Directory of the Black Hills.